Welcome to the first video of this channel. Today we have a specific and somewhat esoteric topic in mind. In this video, I'm going to obsess over what I believe is the golden age of car culture. What made it so great, why it started and ended when it did, who was involved, and as the title of this video implies, that era started in 1982 and ended in 2012. So to start, we'll talk briefly about the history of car culture. The automobile, as we know it today, was invented in the late 19th century, and many decided to take this new invention racing, with the first official race occurring in France in 1894, an 80-kilometer long stretch between Paris and Rouen. And for the next 50 years, automobile racing grew in popularity, birthing the several professional championships such as the Grand Prix, NASCAR, and Le Mans. However, the root of car culture as we know it today started in the 1960s and 1970s. In this era, gas was cheap and the cars that were coming were game-changing. This was the age of the muscle car, with Ford coming out with its Mustang in 1965, Chevrolet revamping its Corvette and its Camaro, Chrysler Dodge with their Challenger and Charger. Across the pond over in Europe, in the more expensive market, Ferrari released its GTB Daytona in 1967. Jaguar had released its E-Type in 1961. Everyone was in on the fun. Mercedes, Porsche, Renault, and many more. Even the Japanese made some of the more memorable icons. In 1973, the fuel crisis hit, and in 1978, the energy crisis happened. The price for fuel had nearly doubled or tripled, and it had become more scarce. Although both of these periods lasted for approximately 1 year, their ramifications were more than game-changing. For those who had loved cars, the energy crisis was a curse. However, in retrospect, this was a blessing in disguise as it helped diversify the car scenes. Due to the rise in fuel prices, people began to buy more fuel-efficient cars and began to import Japanese and European vehicles. This pushed car manufacturers to make one of the most memorable cars of our era. This is where our story begins. So now, we'll go over a brief overview of what I believe is the Golden Age time period, about the cars that were involved, the culture, and what events made it so amazing. So to start, I'm going to talk about what cars were involved. In the early 1980s, there was a special intake of cars to the world. Sporty econo-boxes, 6-cylinder cars that can be tuned to supercar performance. The Peugeot 205 GTI from France, the Audi Quattro, the Toyota MR2, and the XR2 Fiesta. Besides being special, the cars coming out of this were some of the most beautiful cars ever made. Cars such as the BMW E30 M3, the Ford RS200, and Ferrari's beloved Testarossa. The cars from the 1980s started something rarely seen before, a popular selection of cars that was not only available, but was also very diverse. Car modifications and tuning were also becoming more and more popular. From performance to aesthetic, they were becoming more available from different types of cars. Aftermarket brands such as G-Ready, HKS, and Brabus were starting to mass-produce car mods around this time period. The late 1990s and the early 2000s, the elusive R34 Skyline was released. Honda made arguably their best Civic in their 6th generation model in 1999. The last production Mark IV Supra was made in 2004. The pattern here continued, and car culture began to include more and more people as now used cars from the 80s and 90s were being sold at cheaper prices. Ford had reimagined their Mustang and released their Ford GT. Porsche had unveiled its Carrera GT onto the world, touted as being the best performance car of its time. Cars from this era were memorable all across the board. And nowadays, if you ask somebody about what their top 3 vehicles are, 90% of the time, a car from the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s will make it onto that list, if not the whole list. This time period saw the beginning, the rise, and in some cases the end of several professional racing championships, such as the Group E Rally, which ended in 1986, the Dakar Rally, which still goes on today, and the Japanese Touring Car Championship, which ended in 1998. And in Japan, the fame of the elusive Midnight Club has begun to rise. A lot of media entertainment was made about racing, with the rise of popular mangas such as Wangan Midnight and Initial D. Making of Mischief TV. Top Gear's iconic trio was formed in 2003. iconic Formula One rivalry between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. The amount and quality of the media and events was part of the reason why this era was so memorable. This time period wasn't just defined by its cars. One big and arguably more important part was the culture that surrounded this era. Oftentimes, when people get together to socialize over something, the enjoyment that comes out of it isn't in the thing itself but in the social aspect. In the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, many young people took an interest in cars and car ownership, from rich to poor. This increase in interest from young people created a new ethos. The beginning of this era saw a spike in car events, from small to huge car meets. Suddenly, when people got together, it wasn't just about cars, it wasn't just about car racing. This was a new car culture, a culture that created a flame in people. College students, high school graduates who were lost and purposeless suddenly got to network with people who had similar interests, who in other contexts they could never experience such opportunities. Being at these events wasn't just thrilling if you owned a car, but if you just attended, something about it spiked so much emotion in you, made you feel something new, like you were part of something. Car culture, for those who got involved, wasn't just another car club, it was a group of people that wanted to improve their cars, and by extension their lives. It provided those young people with a tribe, friends, meaningful relationships, a space for growth. Paint a picture of what I mean. Imagine you bought your first $1,500 project car, and you wanted to improve it. Make it faster, make it more aesthetically pleasing. You would learn so much along the journey to obtain those goals. Your mechanical skills will improve by working on your car. You would learn many ways on how to make money in order to buy the parts you needed for your car. And your social skills will improve by being around people constantly, and by making friends and meaningful relationships. So why did it end? The first reason was the fast adoption of the internet. In the era we just spoke about, if you wanted to attend a car meet, you would have to hear about it through a friend, through word of mouth, or you would have to have randomly happened upon it. Because it was so much more difficult to find, our brains naturally tied more value to those events. However, now with the widespread use of internet, if you wanted to see a street race, if you wanted to see a cool car, or if you wanted to see somebody's project car, you wouldn't have to go there in person. You could just go on your phone or your laptop. Another reason why the internet put a sour taste in car enthusiasts' mouth. People who were joining the car scene and buying coveted cars within the car community weren't just doing it because they were interested in cars or car culture. They were doing it for that social media attention. Furthermore, inflation and the cost of cars and car ownership. Insurance prices have doubled, gas prices have doubled. A Honda that was cheap to buy 10 years ago had nearly tripled in price. Now, for somebody to join the car scene, they had to pay more with money that was less valuable. And my last reason is regulation. Laws all across the globe put restrictions on car ownership. How old your car can be, what modifications you can put on your car, and even the size of your engine. Law enforcement has also made it a lot more difficult for a lot of people in cars to meet at one place. To conclude, I will finish with the most important part of the video. I don't encourage you to feel negative about the present, and you can't be thinking about the past. After all I have said, I still believe you as an individual can have as much fun as someone during the golden era. The only thing stopping us is our own closed-mindedness. If you live in a country where cars are available, you're 99% guaranteed to find a car scene and be able to join it. You will learn a lot by attending these events, just as I did back in the day. You will learn how to get your hands on a car, how to modify your vehicle, and what events are available to you. Although it is more difficult now, that will add to its value. You can have as many good memories as it did back in the day. They will be different, but that's what's going to make them special. This has been Piaggio in Carthage, and thank you for watching.